So like I said, thank you again, everybody, for attending. And I want to thank Ivo for being able to attend as well. He has a lot of experience, and I really appreciate him having the time to help us out. So this is just an agenda of what we'll be talking about today. We'll be going over Ivo and myself's internships over this past summer, and you'll be able to ask us questions about our experience, and then just some general tips and advice for internships, and then we can discuss that as well. So this summer, I worked at Blue Shield of California as a risk actuary intern, and the role was in healthcare pricing. Some of the languages I used were SAS, SQL, and of course, Excel. Excel is always very heavily used as an actuary, from VBA to using it for simple stuff like pivot tables, VLOOKUPs, and comparisons of data. Some of the projects I worked on was doing claim polls in SAS and SQL. I was really happy to be able to, use some of my skills I learned at UCSB in coding in my position. And another thing I did was I reviewed the cost of healthcare for elder citizens from the previous years, and I use that to help make SAS macros. So basically executing a large amount of statements at once. And this was used to calculate RAF score, which is the risk score for each patient. Basically, the higher the RAF score, the more opportunity there is for money from that person. So if somebody, let's say, only has arthritis, the RAF score will be relatively low. But if they have many higher conditions such as, let's say they have cancer and arthritis and diabetes, the RAF score is higher, meaning that they can get, there's more funding from the federal government. So all this was used to, the goal of the internship, well, the mission of my team was to reduce the cost of healthcare. I was able to work alongside several actuaries and several actuarial analysts, and the head was a chief actuary with an FSA. So there was a lot of experience from actuaries in my team. And overall, when I joined, it was just a team of 3 people, my manager, my mentor, and myself. And it expanded to a team of about 100 people. So I had a lot of different people I could reach out to. I told my manager that I like to work in SAS. And because of that, she allowed me to work for other managers and do smaller tasks in SAS. So that's one piece of advice I have is, let your manager know your strengths. They'll play to your strengths and definitely assign you tasks or projects based on that. And another big one is just networking. Always communicate with everybody in the team and even outside your team. It's great to make these connections. As Ivo knows, and a lot of you know as well, the actuarial industry is very small. Everybody knows everybody. There's a good chance that if you mention actuary's name in a certain company, somebody else from a different company will know exactly who they are. So don't burn bridges, try to stay on everybody's positive side. And yeah, it was a great experience. I love the work environment there. Everybody's very welcoming. Everyone was very adamant on me reaching out. And that's another piece of advice I have is always reach out for help. You'll have, let's say, a hard task that your manager assigns you. I had a few hard tasks where I had an understanding of Excel, but I was asked to do double and triple nested VLOOKUPs, and I wasn't as familiar with that. So of course I'd work on them independently as much as I could. And once I felt I had a good amount of progress, then I would reach out. So, it's always good to work on your own, and this is just in general, I'd say in education and in your career, if you're stuck somewhere and it's been, let's say, longer than half an hour, maybe an hour, and you don't know where you're going or how to solve a certain problem, that's when you want to reach out to somebody within your team. A lot of these people have great experience and they've been in the same position as you. At Blue Shield, they were very kind. I'd have one-on-one meetings. They would show me shortcuts to use in SAS, shortcuts to use in Excel, and just overall career advice, how to be successful, the right track to take. And just, I was really blessed to be able to work with people that were so kind, and a couple people that were young as well. So they knew the situation I was in. They knew some of the courses I had taken. I would say that some of the courses that helped me for this internship, first I'd say PSTAT 10 for SQL. Next, I would say PSTAT 130 for SAS. And I would also say somewhat PSTAT 171 for finance. At least in my experience, some of these courses like PSTAT 120A, PSTAT 120B weren't as applicable, but it just depends all on the position that you're working. I know that PSTAT 183 is very helpful for reserving. I did a case competition for UCLA earlier this year. Unfortunately, I was more on the pricing side, so the reserving didn't play a part. But yeah, those are the courses that helped me. And I'll now pass it on to Ivo.
All right, thanks, Dylan. And good afternoon, everyone. And my name is Ivo Zhang. I interned at Aon this past summer with their retirement actuarial team, or in Aon, what we so-called a wealth solutions team. So what we do is essentially retirement actuarial consulting. As some of you probably know, Aon is a very big consulting firm, a leading one, in fact, in the United States. And it has retirement consulting, P&C consulting, as well as health and benefit consulting as the three main actuarial consulting business. And I was with the retirement team in San Francisco. So throughout the summer, as this is a consulting actuarial role that I interned with, the workflow and the dynamic is very different from the insurance side that I also worked with in the past. And one of the foremost that you would notice is that as opposed to like one or a few major projects that take place throughout the entire 10 or 12-week internship, my internship was comprised mostly of smaller tasks, but many of them. So at the end of my internship, I did a presentation to my managers and my team. And for that presentation, I did a little bit of a review, and it surprisingly found that I conducted a total of 27 client delivering tasks, and that covers, I think, 16, let me actually double check. Yeah, 16 different clients, and 23, I want to say 23 unique types of work in them. So the consulting business is not like one or a few big actuarial research to support the pricing or the reserving. Instead, the consulting actually is heavily oriented around whatever client request that happens to come your way. And it's the same thing for interns. I would say I've worked mainly for 3 clients with several different tasks. And there are other clients here and there, time to time, that the team member happens to in need of some extra help, and ad hoc tasks will come my way. As for tools used, it's also very interesting that the coding languages that I was previously familiar with, things like R or Python, we don't really use them much anymore, at least not in the day-to-day work. Instead, at Aon, a lot of my time, especially in the beginning parts of my internship, I spent a lot of time learning the tools that Aon has or even developed themselves to support and streamline the consulting workflow. So from the simple ones, Excel is still the best friend of actuaries as usual. It's a very easy to navigate and has a lot of capacity to be automated to a higher extent. ProVal is something that is very new to me at least at the time. I don't think ProVal is something that we will easily get exposure to in the academic setting, because it's a third-party software that is specially designed to support actuarial valuations, and in pension setting, it supports the pension plan valuations that we conduct for most of the clients that still have a pension plan on an annual basis, that is. So speaking of that, kind of brings it to the exact type of work that we do in a pension consulting internship or the pension consulting business overall. So the key service that we perform for clients is what we call the valuation. So essentially, we serve the clients that still have what we call a defined benefit plan, a traditional pension plan. So if they are an employer and they offer this or used to offer this to their employees, they will have an outstanding pension plan. And by having that, according to laws and government regulations, they need to perform annual valuation of how their pension is standing, how many participants is left, how much future liability are we projecting or expecting. So those kind of services require actuaries to perform. And I would say most companies don't think it's a good deal to hire an actuary all year around just for this. So that's why they come to consulting firms like Aon so that consulting actuaries like us can provide this service for them, like I said, on an annual basis. And branching out from the valuation results, we will then prepare a lot of presentations that could go from simply valuation results to strategic recommendations, other analysis if the client so requests, and preparing government filings based on the valuation results. The numbers that comes out from the valuation have to go to a lot of the filings. Some are specifically actuarial filings, the others might be accounting filings. Even some of the numbers have to go into the balance sheet. So that's what we do. And there are other services around the pension plan, such as the benefit calculations. Those are also something that we do. That's more like on an individual level. If the client have an employee that have somewhat a special case, like delayed retirement beyond age 70, and things like that, the special calculations on a case-by-case basis, we also perform that. And I happen to have the opportunity to perform a few of that this summer as well. Something I didn't put on this slide is that I'm sure many of you have heard the saying that pension actually is a declining, or some would even use the word a dying sector, because of the trend that's been going on ever since I would say ever since the late 90s or even into the 2000s. That a lot of the employers are switching from defined benefit plans to defined contribution plans, DB to DC. And this transition have a critical element in it, that is DC plans generally doesn't require actuarial service. So some are saying that this trend is putting pension actuaries out of business. Well, that is true to some extent. It's not as severe as some of the media say. I mean, on simple terms, those companies that previously had the defined benefit plans still need to see that this plan eventually gets finished off somehow, and that takes time. This alone, even if they want to get rid of their defined benefit plan, this effort will take 20 or 30 years or even more so in the future. So there's still a lot of work that would require retirement actuaries to do, and that's why I decided it's okay that I'm stepping into this sector to start with. But that being said, on the other hand, it is true that the trend of switching from defined benefit to defined contribution is very real. So in the face of that, a lot of pension actuaries are also looking into how we would transition to adapt this trend. What kind of different service can we then offer based off defined contribution or in other means to continue to serve our client on top of the defined benefit realm. So I haven't had the opportunity to do some of those projects Aon had a, I believe, proprietary service called the uh, benefit benefit stack select. It's instead of retirement benefits only, it's an overall broad view of employers' benefit package to employee and how they stand in their line of business comparing to other competitors. So this kind of benchmarking service, and there are other services that Aon is actively developing based on defined contribution plans and so forth. And those are other things that I will have a chance to learn more as I move forward and continue to work with Aon. So yeah, I think that's what I have to say about the my experience in the retirement sector.
Thank you, Ivo. You know a lot about that. I'm really happy you're able to share all your insights. So if anybody has any questions for Ivo or myself, feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat.
Okay, I had a question. Hi, Dylan. Hi, Ivo. Ivo, I know that you are returning full time to Aon. So, Dylan, do you like the company you interned for enough to return to Blue Shield as a full-time employee?
Thank you for that question. You know, they asked me, can you work for us over this fall quarter? And I told them I can't. I said, you know, I'd love to, but I'm taking 3 upper did PSTAT courses and helping the association. It's my final year. But the question, would I go back? I think I would. Blue Shield is a really welcoming company. They have a great work culture, work environment. They offer, like you've heard from other companies, they have after work event, you know, socials, happy hour, outings. So it's a really nice group of people, and they offer leadership programs. So there's a clear pipeline to how get into leadership and managerial positions. They do offer rotations. The team I worked in, there was a good actuarial aspect, but there was a lot of data analytics and data recon. So there were definitely some data science components to it. I did enjoy them, but I think that I would probably take maybe a different actuarial position at Blue Shield on a different team. You know, I love the people I work with, but I think I'm looking for something more, you know, it's completely focused around the actuarial industry. I know Ivo, he's in retirement. That's something that I want to go into, life and retirement, more on the SOA track. That's just a personal preference. But yeah, I love the company. I love the people. I think Blue Shield's a great company to work for.
Okay, thanks for the answer. Also to you both again, can you speak on the company's attitude towards remote work? Do they encourage it? Do they encourage hybrid or not at all?
Ivo, would you like to go first?
Yeah. But sorry, did you ask about remote working and how the companies that we worked with deals with that? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay. So as of this summer, our team is pretty much on a hybrid workflow. So is a lot of the other teams at Aon. So it's not just our retirement team, but what I see at our San Francisco office overall that covers many different teams. I would say at least 6 different teams. We're pretty much on a hybrid model. For our team, most of the colleagues on our team come into the office about 2 or 3 times a week. That's the idea. I personally go into the office almost every single day because I live very close, and besides, my temporary living space is very small and depressing. So that's largely a personal choice. At this point, Aon is pretty much leaving the choice for us to choose based on our best workflow and needs. I know there are a few colleagues on our team that is still on a full remote schedule. Two or three of them some of them I didn't even get a chance to meet in person during the summer. Others that are closer to the office, they come in, like I said, about 3 times a week. Other teams upstairs. What's interesting is so our office is on 27th and 28th floor of the building, right? And we are, myself, we are located on the 27th floor, and our floor is for some reason extremely quiet most of the time. I think there are 3 other teams on our floor that those 3 teams happen to still mostly be on full remote and don't even really come in. The 28th floor, on the other hand, where the PNC teams and health and benefits teams are located, they are much more lively on a daily basis. I think they come into the office on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So there's a lot more people and a lot more things and fun going on up there. Also, the snacks bar is up there, so I don't know whether that contributed, but so yeah, we're still on a hybrid flow, and I think companies at this point are well equipped for that as well. So yeah, what about you, Dylan?
Yeah, I would say Blue Shield is still transitioning back to in person. My internship was fully online, but they gave me the chance to go in person to the Woodland Hills office. I live in Chatsworth, so about 6 miles from there, but it was only in the last week of the internship. And I had classes I was taking at UCSB over summer session B. So unfortunately, I couldn't go in person. But they're still very accommodating. They know that some people don't feel comfortable going in person, so they still offer full remote work. I believe they'll transition to hybrid, but yeah, it's still, COVID has ended, obviously, but they're still recovering. A lot of people are used to being online. They don't want to force anybody to go in person. I would have loved to be in person, if I'm being honest. I think that being in person, it's, you make better connections with people, and I think you'd agree with that as well. It's a lot easier to just bond with somebody. But at the same time, being hybrid does have its benefits. Being online, it's a little easier to plan for meetings. You can do quick drop-in meetings with people. People are quick, answering questions and things like that. Yeah, Blue Shield definitely going into hybrid right now. They're all online or remote during COVID up until August. Yeah, I think a lot of companies now are starting to realize that they can, and this isn't just actuarial, this is somewhat actuarial, but I'd say overall, a lot of businesses are going remote or hybrid because they're realizing that they can save money by either renting out smaller office spaces or just having less staff in person. So it's definitely, COVID has definitely changed the overall work setting for in-person, online, hybrid. I think it's great. I know a lot of internships are for next summer, they're still remote. So that's one piece of advice I have is look around the country. If you really need an internship, look around. I know that when I was applying, I applied to probably 25 to 30 companies, which isn't that many, I don't think. But I was applying in Miami, New York, Chicago, everywhere, because a good amount of these offered, online remote work. So don't be limited to only your local, if you're in LA, only the Southern California region. Be open to working around the country because it is remote a lot of times. You will have to work, if it's East Coast and you're here, you're going to have to be, wake up a lot earlier, but it's definitely worth it for the experience.
Okay, great advice. Speaking of applying, so in general, out of all of the interviews you guys have sat through, would you say that actuarial interviews are mainly just the normal interview questions, like situational and what would you do if this happened? Or would you say they also have a good number of like technical questions? Like how would you do this in Excel or something like that?
Yeah, great question, Kyla. So me and Ivo were actually discussing this beforehand, and it's something that's Ivo's been more aware of it, but I'm somewhat new to learning about this. They're starting to have case studies. So you'll have half an hour to an hour and a half to solve a problem based off information they give you, data they give you. I haven't had that experience. All the interviews I've done is based on behavior. They ask you some technical skills. One thing that I know, Ivo, you've heard a lot, and I remember you advised me on this as well. They'll ask you actuarial, insurance, and statistics questions, such as one popular one I know Aon likes to do is, what is linear regression? What is variance? Can you explain it to us as if we were children that don't have an understanding of it? Things like that. And then you'll also get random questions. I've gotten questions. I was speaking to you earlier about this, Michaela. How many tires are there in the United States right now? How much would it cost to clean all the windows in Seattle? Random questions. There's no correct answer, and they tell you that, but they want to see your approach and what statistical methods and things you'll incorporate. Variance, standard deviation, like sample means, things like that. Case studies are somewhat new. I don't think I'm qualified to speak about that as much. Is it something you want to talk about, Ivo?
Is that a different question? I don't see anything in chat.
Yeah, this is just she's asking about like typical questions you get. I know behavioral, they want to see like how you work in a team setting, but for case studies and working in Excel. I know Excel, I've never been asked to do that, but have you had example with case studies or anything like that?
Not during an interview specifically. Overall, I think the actuarial interviews doesn't tend to dig too deep into technical details, because effectively, especially for actuaries that already work in the industry, right? The things that we work on a daily basis doesn't really require us to have like instant memorized like answer to a lot of these technical things. We have references, we have tools. So that's not really something that we necessarily practice on. It's very different in the actual like practicing world. So they don't. I feel like, at least based off the interviews that I have participated in, they don't tend to ask too deep of a technical question. The technical related things, like you said, is that a lot of times consulting firms, even some insurance actuarial teams, they will ask you to try to explain concepts, whether it's insurance or statistics, to kind of try to gauge your communication skill and your presentation skill. So that's a common type of question. Open-ended behavioral, open-ended scenario questions, things like what I've came across is a popular golf-related question. I think Marsh that gives that one. And there are others like estimating the number of pizzas getting sold at a given store, things like that. So these kind of open-ended questions to gauge your thought process, that's common. Some companies would go beyond that to do like case study like activities, or even full on like a short case study. You put you together in teams of 3 and give you 2 hours to work on a case study prompt and then do a presentation. They will observe the whole thing. So there are companies that would go to that extent, companies or teams that would go there, but it's relatively few, I would say. So it's not like a common thing. It's more like a unique thing of certain employer. But yeah, it's also possible for that to happen. That's a very, it's a time-wise costly way, but it's also a nice and effective method to observe us in action, right? And that's exactly what they want to see in candidates. They want to see how this candidate really do in action. That's why they do that.
Okay, thank you both for your answers. Very insightful. That's all I had.
Any other questions? You can unmute yourself or put it in the chat if you'd like. Okay, well, if there's nothing for now, I'll move on to just some tips and advice for internships. And if another question comes to mind about our experiences or you want any advice at the end, we'll also be doing more questions then. So tips for applying. Apply now. The recruitment season started, I'd say, maybe 2 months ago. There's a lot of opportunities out there. So I know we're having a career fair in our info sessions, but you should definitely look at other companies as well. I'd say try to apply to 30 plus different companies and maybe get in a habit of applying to 1 or 2 or 3 a day, maybe just depending on your schedule. And then if you have the financial means, apply out of state. I know last year I didn't get one in the fall and I was desperate. So I applied to Miami, New York, Chicago, Minneapolis, New Jersey, a few other areas, because at that point, then, and some of them told me, we don't have stipends for you. We can't pay for your rent or, your housing for that time period. And I was prepared to spend all of my salary in the internship on just housing. So if you can do that, or if, your family or you have a scholarship, something like that, definitely be open to that. I know a lot of people only apply in California, but it's great to go to other parts of the country. And that's, if you're able to. Another thing, if you can check the sponsor status before applying, that is very helpful. I know some companies in the requirements or in the details for the position, they will tell you if they have sponsorship for internships and for full-time. So just make sure to, read the description, see if you find anything like that if you are an international student. It's painful to apply and go through the process just to get an email that they don't have sponsorship. So yeah, it'll be more efficient, and definitely read the description when you're applying. And then preparing for your internship. So brushed up on actuarial concepts, insurance concepts, some financial concepts based on the position you're going into. Definitely practice Excel. It doesn't matter what company you're at. And I believe you probably agree with this. They all use Excel. They're all heavy in Excel. And you may think, oh, I know Excel. I've used it for projects and stuff. But they'll ask you to do like simple things like obviously matches, VLOOKUPs, pivot tables. Then they may ask you to go into VBA. They may ask you. Okay, I'll answer your question at the end, Michaela. Okay, same with Robert. I'll answer your questions at the end. But if you have something on your resume that you said, I know Python, I know this skill, that skill, definitely brush up. You want to show that you are, 1, an honest person, and 2, that you're prepared for the position. Next, I would say, yeah, understand the role you'll be serving. So, know exactly what industry it's in. You should, obviously, since you applied. Like I said, read the description, understand what types of projects you'll be working on, what type of team you'll be in, and like if there's any, tasks or things that you need to have, like, prerequisites or requirements, things like that. You want to show up, you want to be present, and you want to show them that you are, you're a person that they could hire. Yeah, make sure you meet all expectations prior to internship. You don't want to show up and they have to walk you through the basics. At the same time, there are things. We had a Pacific Life info session on Thursday, and thank you for those that could attend. We talked about, or at least Brian and Jeremy talked about, they use Tableau. Now, Tableau is a software that I believe it costs $1,000 plus. They don't expect students to have knowledge in that. Same with one thing, Ivo, you may have heard about. I know Pacific Life told us. They said, Python's the future of the actuarial industry. You can use SQL with Python. That was new to me. I didn't know you could use SQL and Python. And you can use Excel as well, like in the back door. So things like that, like very specific languages or things that aren't offered in online courses at UCS or UCSB, don't be afraid. Things like that, they're going to prepare you for. I know when I was at Blue Shield, They walked me through, using SQL and SAS. I was somewhat familiar with it, but it wasn't taught in SAS or in R. So certain things they will definitely teach you. They'll give you training courses. This slide is a little bit big, so tips for being successful your internship. Ask questions. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy. Speak up if you don't understand something, or if you want to know why you're doing something. Definitely talk to your manager, talk to your coworkers. You want to have an understanding of the purpose of your team and how your work is helping your team and your company. Network, network, network. When I was at Blue Shield, we had motivational speakers come. We had people in leadership speak to us, and they said, networking is one of the most important things in this internship. You should try to reach out to as many people in your team and in your division. Set up one-on-one meetings. Go to actual large group meetings. Connect with people on LinkedIn. For group meetings, when you first start, at least in my situation, they were talking about things that I didn't know about. It was way over my head. I didn't know what was going on. But as the weeks went by, I understood, oh, they're talking about something that I work on or something my managers talk to me about. You can see how your work or your manager's work, your team's work is being used, critiques on it. You can get advice from the meetings, things like that. Go out of your comfort zone. If there's a project or task your manager asks you, oh, do you know how to do this? Can you do this? Say yes. You want to show that you're willing to learn. That's one of the most important things in work, is not only you're able to learn, but you want to learn more. It might be difficult for you and you might, be stuck, but that's when you can reach out to your team, get help, and you just grow as a person when you go out of your comfort zone. If you have any strengths or languages that you know about computer-wise, tell your manager, tell your team. For me, it was SAS. My manager understood that and said, you know what, instead of giving you like some remedial Excel smaller tasks, because I was in some of the same position as you, they had me do a lot of smaller tasks and a couple bigger things. Instead of doing my workload being Excel, she reached out to other managers and within the overall team, and they would kind of use me for pulling claims in SAS, for doing recon in SAS, things like that. And it was fun because they offered me the opportunity. They said, a lot of the stuff is in SQL. We use SQL statements within SAS. If you want, you can do it purely in SAS and put this into our drive so that people that are later working on this can use it purely in SAS. And, I'd build documents that had my code that showed how to walk through modifications you need to make, things like that. So, I was so happy to be able to use. Some of you hate SAS, I know that. Same with R, but when you're in a position where you're learning a lot of new stuff and there's some familiarity, it'll really make you happy. You know what you're doing. People started coming to me to ask about SAS, to ask about what I'm doing, what statements I'm using, some of the syntax, things like that. So it really made me feel valued. Like I said before, work on assignments independently, try on your own before reaching out. But if you get stuck, it's not efficient to try for 2 hours. You're just wasting time. You should definitely reach out to people, get the help you need. Lastly, use company resources. I know that at Blue Shield, they offer LinkedIn learning courses that you could use during the duration of your internship. And for my company, they didn't have Tableau or things like that. But like I said earlier, I know Pacific Life does offer Tableau to their interns. So if there's a language, an expensive language or expensive software that they offer, definitely take advantage of that. Bettering your skills in that language or in that software, that's something you could definitely write on your resume. And if you go to another company, you already have that skill. So that will definitely give you the edge in terms of battling people for the position. Are there any things that any tips for being successful that you want to bring to the table, Ivo?
You have a very well prepared slide on this one, but I do relate strongly to especially some of the asking questions definitely, because at the end of the day, especially this is especially true for an internship. I know especially for like if you're graduating soon after the internship, or even like already graduated before going into an internship, you probably feel more desperate to to view this internship as an opportunity to full-time offer. But that's true at times. That's even true for me during the summer. But don't lose perspective that it's also a learning experience, and you should know that, and more importantly, your employer knows that. And what they wish to see is that you utilize this learning opportunity well to grow towards becoming the employee that they would hope for. So don't be shy to ask questions. It's not like an exposure of your weakness. Instead, this showcases how you can get to the point of key points of learning, and you're active in learning about the industry, learning about the work that you do. That's the strength that they would like to see in candidates most of the time. And networking, most definitely, and I personally do feel like the in-person experience, as what the fact that I chose to be on site most of the day, helped tremendously, at least for me, helped tremendously on the networking experience. Last summer I had another internship, which, by the way, if you guys are interested in PNC internship experience, or PNC insurance side experience, feel free to talk about that soon after this slide. I think we have more time for Q&A. I can talk about that as well. But that was a full remote internship. I was in Santa Barbara the whole time. And that just made like socializing and networking almost impossible for me. I say I built decent connection with my manager, which we have. I have like weekly check-in with him. I built a great bond with my mentor, who worked hand in hand with me on a project. So we work almost on a daily basis, have calls, communicate about work. But other members on the team, I had very little opportunity to get in touch with. It's just different, without being able to, be in the same office and, grab coffee together or head out for lunch together, without those like opportunities, is not just the same. So I would say, I know this depends on a lot of factors, but I personally definitely treasure the in-person experience a lot more. So that's a thing. Learn about why you are doing a certain task. So what I want to say is, so this summer my manager is nice, and everyone that I worked on, in fact, is nice enough that whatever task that I participated in, they almost always copy me in emails for delivering these work, or the eventual product of this work. And I get to see where this heads to. I get to see how they deliver it, as well as what other changes and modifications they made on top of my work after reviewing what I had. So all of those were excellent learning materials for me to really grow on the technical skill aspect, to see what I did right, what I did wrong, and the next steps of the work that was part of. Because at least for me in the consulting side, frankly, it's not possible for me as an intern, or even when I'm entry level in the first couple of years, to like so-called independently work on a whole thing. It's always a collaborative effort. So I get to see how my work plays a part in the overall picture, and that's an important part of learning the industry you're in. So if your manager didn't realize to like include it in that experience on their own, like don't be shy. There's no reason to be shy to ask whatever, hey, wherever that project went to, or did this get delivered to the client yet, or things like that. I'm sure they're more than happy to provide you kind of a review or provide you an update as of where the project, where the work went. So that's a thing you really should ask for. Another thing I guess I'll bring up, a tip, is to really keep notes of everything you do, everything you learn. The projects that you do, the tasks that you work on, or the learning sessions you've been to, the team meetings that you had a chance to sit in on. So all of these, take notes and keep good archiving of those notes, because they will come in really handy, especially at the end of your internship. You're more than likely to be asked to do an intern presentation to tell the team, or sometimes even to a broader audience, about your experience, about what you did, what you learned. And you really should keep that in mind and start accumulating kind of materials for this to build this presentation from day one. So it will be stressful to find out you're going to do a presentation like this in the middle of the internship, and then you already forgot the small details of things you did in the first couple of weeks, which is natural, because without notes, especially if your internship, your workload is busier, it's easy to forget about the things in the past couple of weeks, unless you have notes. So keep close notes. That would be very helpful for that.
Thank you, Ivo. Thank you so much. Yeah, I guess I just have to say, like, two things going off your advice. Definitely keep in close contact with your manager, people you work with. People move around all the time in different companies. So, if you already have a connection at a different company, or if you want to reapply for full-time or another internship at the same company, it'll really help you out. It shows that you're really interested in the company. And then lastly, the worst thing you can do is stay in your box, stay in your lane, be comfortable, only play to your strengths. I understand it's good to build your strengths, but internships give you the opportunity to improve on your weaknesses and to, just go out of your comfort zone. So we kind of already talked about tips for after your internship. Obviously, thank everyone who's helped you. Stay connected with all your contacts. And if you don't receive an offer, reach out to the company at a later time for opportunities, if you're interested in working for them. And like Ivo said, keep notes. Keep notes, take notes of everything. It's good to know these skills, how you apply them, especially like in coding, if you have any like long macros you built, things like that. Definitely try to keep note of them. They could help you later on if you're doing something similar, or just to discuss them in an interview or put on your resume. So I'm going to go to the current chat to see previous questions. So Michaela asked, besides LinkedIn and Handshake, do you have other places you recommend we look for jobs? Those are the two main ones that I go to. Is there any you suggest, Ivo?
Not really. I think, aside from those two, the one resource I heavily depend on is probably just our school connection, the career fair. I don't really have any other specific sources that I would recommend. But that being said, I think on top of these platforms, what you can do is, if you notice an employer that seems to post some opportunities on these platforms, you might as well go from there and head towards this company's website. Maybe they have their own career section that lists out opportunities that sometimes can contain opportunities that's not yet put it on the platform. So that being said, I don't have another name that I can really think of. But I think these two put together will give you a decently sized opportunity pool to work through.
Thank you, Ivo. And then Robert asked, Is it easier to get an internship during seasons other than summer, since people are back in school during those times of year and less people are applying to these internships? So myself, I didn't get an internship over fall. I applied in winter. There, like February or March, February, March, April, that's when I applied. That's when I got my internship at Blue Shield. In terms of having internships for, maybe in winter, if if you're able to take a quarter off, then I'd say go for it. I know they offer some winter internships that will go from like December to March. Those aren't as likely. A lot of times they try to target these students in the summer session. They even offer, I've heard of 6-month internships. So depending on how ahead you are in school, on track, if you don't mind doing an extra quarter, an extra year, if you really want this internship, I would say do it. But a lot of times I'd say summer is the most popular time. And then Michaela, I saw you asked again. Sometimes job applications ask for a salary or salary range we want. Any tips on the number range we should put? So usually I will put like I'll either ask for like in words like the average market rate, or I'll say negotiable. There's a salary range they have in mind. Obviously, don't be too ambitious and ask for a crazy amount, but myself, I usually don't put an exact number. If somebody asks me over the phone or in an interview, I think it's a little easier to talk about. I'd say, I want a salary that's comparable for an actuarial position in this city, because you have to remember, if you're in the big cities, LA, San Francisco, New York, Chicago, the salary will be higher compared to if you apply for Phoenix or Houston, big cities, but they're not as massive for actuaries. Do you put a specific number, Ivo, when asking for salary?
I same thing. I pretty much just dodged the question by putting
Yeah.
Things like negotiable, flexible. I wouldn't really put it literally whatever, but it's kind of the idea. I think for me, what I had in mind most of the times back then was, having been in the spot of in need of immigration sponsorship, I feel like it's more important that I avoid any slight chance of me being filtered out by the HR department because of my response to that question. So I pretty much didn't. Yeah, I pretty much just dodged the question. I would say even some of the numbers that you see online about average salary or average pay, about say entry-level actuaries, actual interns. And there are many websites out there that provide these so-called statistics, and really their numbers jumps around quite wild as well. Like just say I just signed Aon's full-time offer a week back, and out of curiosity, I tried to look up and see the salary they offered me, how that performs in the market. So I tried to Google that. According to some websites, I have kind of like on average or even slightly above average pay for my entry level position. According to some other websites, I'm severely underpaid. So there's really so till this day I still don't know. I'd say on an application, when they ask for a number or range, if you're unless you really have a strong need or determined standard of what pay would only what pay would interest you, unless you really have a standard, a line drawn, just dodge the question. There's no point answering. I wouldn't say that question really helps much anyways, especially not for internship positions. Most of the times that's probably a standard format designed really more for full-time or even experienced full-time positions. So yeah, but on the other hand, when you're getting an offer, and they offer you a number, really, I think what you need to review if that really impacts your decision. It's more of the income, how that income level fits your living standards, in that part of town. Say when I evaluate, I have to take into consideration the higher living costs in San Francisco, right? So it's more of evaluating based on your own situation at that time, instead of like necessarily trying to compare across with others. Because it's too many factors involved. It's really hard to tell when you're comparing with a comparable competitors. So yeah, I'll say that much.
Thank you, Ivo. Are there any other questions? Anything at all? Feel free to unmute yourself or send a message. Last chance. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So like in order to be an actuary, do you have to be in that major or like other major also works?
So, and thank you for the question. So the question, do you have to be actuarial science major to be an actuary? No, I would say absolutely not. I would say if you are in a data science, financial math, actuarial science, or insurance field, and if you're taking exams, you do have a better chance. Some companies do have strict requirements, but when I was at Blue Shield, one of my coworkers, who was an actuary, he's in his late 20s. He majored in health science and communications. It's kind of like being a stockbroker. You just have to pass an exam to get into the position. Obviously, like I said, being an actuarial science major will help you out. Recently, I interviewed with Segal, retirement pension firm on the East Coast. And one of the actuaries, she was an actuary for 10 years. She was an elementary teacher for the first 20 years of her career. And she majored in education at college. And then one day she decided, I want to be an actuary. So she took some online courses and then just took exams. So major will not restrict you. Some companies will like scrutinize you, and that's only some. Ivo, have you seen any companies that require you to have an actuarial science, data science major?
But I would say specific to major, flat out impossible. Because you just think this, most schools doesn't even have actuarial science established as a major program per se. So it's flat out impossible for companies. It's not reasonable for them to ask about this. In fact, I would say actuarial science, not actuarial science, though, actuary as a career is among those careers that are easy to switch into. Easy not in terms of like actual effort you have to invest. It's more so easy in a way that it's open, have a clear line for you that as long as you're capable of passing actuarial exams, you're on track of becoming an actuary. So it cares very little about your academic background or professional background. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, so the key thing is to pass the exams, right?
Yes.
Okay,
and then another thing, since you're in college now, and if you're applying for these internships, I would say do case competitions through the actuarial association, because these case competitions offer you, the chance to learn new material that's usually ahead of what you're learning. I know I did one in January, the UCLA one, and the material was all pieced at 183. I had no idea what was happening. Thankfully, John Tran, the previous vice president of the Actuarial Association, he was in my team. He helped provide materials to study, things like that. These case competitions really show that you're being proactive. You're going out there to get these actuarial experiences. Even if it's not an internship, it will be a big talking point in your interviews. So for now, if you're not an actuarial science major, case competitions, and exams. I think those are the two most important things you can focus on that will help you.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
Of course. And then I saw Robert ask, are there going to be in-person meetings for the association this quarter? There will be. The student of office life has been backed up on appointment or on confirming reservations in person, but they're starting to get better at it. So I believe in, check the calendar. Week 3, the career fair will be totally in person, and the following day on Friday, next Friday, there will be in-person interviews. I know Sharon, Aon, and Pacific Life will all have in-person interviews in the theater and dance classrooms. We'll be having more in-person events starting week 4, definitely. I know that it's been hard to reserve rooms first couple of weeks, but you know, I've seen some of you around at the table when we've been campaigning by the Arbor. I'd love to see more of you in person. I know I'm in a lot of classes with you. A lot of classes have many officers of the association. So yeah, if you see somebody, you know, they're an officer, you know, go up to them, talk to them. We'd love to connect with you. And yeah, we're looking forward to more in-person events. We're a little over time, but if there's any last minute questions you have, you know, speak now. Of course, Robert. Okay, so that's everything. No more questions. I just want to thank you all for attending today. I want to thank Ivo as well for sharing his knowledge and his experience with Aon with the students. Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, thank you everybody for attending. This recording will be posted to our YouTube in the next couple days. So if you want to go back, look at the PowerPoint or see some of the things we talked about, feel free to, and we'll announce it in an email as well. So yeah, thank you for coming and have a great day, everybody.